Today, I want to talk about why the 9 to 5 just doesn't work anymore. I want to give a little bit of my experience and then just make a couple points and see what you guys think. But I do want to preface this video by saying that at a very, very basic level, the 9 to 5 essentially does still work. And the only, thing I want to say is that at the very basic level, you do work, you go to work, and you get paid, right? Like that's, of course, the point of a job. However, there are many things that go along with that simply don't work anymore, right? So at a very basic level, yes, we still get paid to work, which is good, right? But it's changed, and it's changed a lot. And I want to talk about that today. So I'm going to kind of just list a few things and talk about all of them. But one of the first things I want to talk about is just burnout, right? Like this idea of just doing the same thing each and every day, right? And I get that sometimes it's unavoidable. Like your job's your job. You got to go 5 days a week. You got to do what you got to do. You do your job. Sometimes, some people's jobs are very much a new day, different task. But some jobs are also like same day, same task, or a different day, same task. And with my job, especially having worked in corporate America, pretty much since I graduated college, burnout is real. I mean, there are just so many jobs that you just don't feel that good about what you do. Either you have a poor manager, or maybe the job just really sucks, and you just get so tired of trying, not living up to someone's expectations, and just feeling like you're not anything, like you're just a failure, right? And so with that being said, I think most of you guys know that in the corporate world, the whole goal is to move up and become a manager. And now when it comes to promotions, I mean, the whole corporate promotion scheme is very strange because each company has its own little thing, right? So there's a corporate game to be played, right? So many times the best worker or the best employee does not get the promotion. And the reason for that is because there's a game to be played, right? An employee, if they know the game, they'll be doing their best to impress the hiring manager or their manager to when that job comes up, they will be the first one that their manager thinks of. It's usually the person that's the most outgoing, the most energetic, the one who in theory looks like they try the hardest, but they actually don't do anything, right? And I don't want to call out all managers either, because my next thing is this idea that managers should be getting paid like double what a normal worker is getting, which I think is absolutely insane, right? Like I would think an interesting business idea or a way to go forward in the future is actually having the managers make less than your you're doing the grind work employee. Like the employees that actually do the grunt work, they should be getting more than the managers. And the reason I feel that is because nothing happens within a company without the people actually doing the grunt work at the very bottom. And so these managers, and what makes it kind of toxic is everybody's looking to become a manager, but not everybody should be a manager, right? And that's when we get into some really toxic environments when you have individuals who are really good, individual contributors, who are now looking to become a manager and actually, manage people. And managing people is not something that everybody can do. And so if you ended up paying managers less than the individual contributor, the people who would want to be managers would be the people that should be the managers, who are doing it for the right reasons and not just because they make more money. And so that's kind of a whole nother topic in itself, but it would be interesting to see a company where it's like 90% of non-managers, and then the managers they do have are paid either equal or just slightly less than most of the individual contributors, right? And I get that managers hold a lot more stress and a lot more responsibility, but I do notice that a lot of the times they just sit on meetings and, they don't necessarily contribute a whole lot to like the everyday work. And sometimes managers do. Sometimes managers don't. So it just really kind of depends. But just to kind of go off of getting promoted, because usually that's why we work, is to get promoted. One of the big things that working a corporate job in the 9 to 5 today that isn't talked about a lot, and I don't want to say I kind of made this up. I'm not the first one to talk about this idea. It's probably called something different, but what I call it is the rule of 100. Okay, so I call it the rule of 100. So essentially what that means, and where I came up with this, is whenever I used to play a lot of Fortnite, I used to try to get a gauge on how good I was, right? And so every time you load into a Fortnite game, you're with 100 different players. And in any given game, you will be, essentially, you will either be better than most, worse than most, or somewhere in the middle. And I got to the point where in my head, I thought I was better than 90% of the Fortnite players I would go up against. And I would win a lot of games and I would do well in games to where I would think that. Now, sometimes, of course, in Fortnite, you get killed by a player who's not near as good as you. Or sometimes you would end up killing a player who's much better than you. And now it's all a variable, right, on situations, but it's also the same in business. If you're having to compete, let's just say it's not even 100 people. Let's just say it's just 10 people. You're competing with 10 people for that promotion. You have to be number one, right? So if you're in a job where you have to be the best at your job and nothing else, you have to be number one. So the craziest thing is, in this rule of 100, you could essentially be third out of 100 people, right? And you still won't get that promotion. So what I'm saying with all of this is essentially you could be one of the best at something, but you're in the wrong company. Or you're getting overlooked because there is somebody who is just slightly better than you. And that's really crazy to me because there are so many really talented people who get passed up each and every day just because of this rule, right? Like how I kind of think of it is, you take 100 race car drivers and you have them race one lap, right? You will have 1 to 100. Now, in theory, if for the difference between the number one race car driver and the number 100 is maybe only a couple seconds, barring maybe a crash or anything. And the crazy thing is, they're not that different. And a lot of this is the same in business. A lot of these workers aren't any different. A lot of the times it's just a popularity contest. So this what really also pushes people to this burnout is they work so hard to try and get this promotion, and then they get passed up by somebody who may or may not even be better at their job, better overall, actually worthy of that promotion. And that's just what I consider to be the rule of 100, is that you might be better than all your coworkers, or you might be second or third best. And the odds of you getting that promotion are usually very thin. And that's what contributes to people just not being in love with their work, right? Like they get passed up, they're not having a good time, they put their heart and soul into things. And I think that's where everything has shifted recently. And a lot of millennials and Gen Zs are feeling this way, including myself, is that, a lot of these jobs you just don't even feel like putting that much effort into. I mean, there is a lot of BS jobs out there. Jobs where you sit at a desk all day and just essentially just click buttons, right? There's no pride in your work, like, making PDFs, doing Excel, calculations, this and that. There's not a lot of pride. And, some days I wake up and I'm like, man, I kind of envy to a certain degree blue collar jobs because there's a little bit of pride in like building something and completing something that's actually meaningful, right? But at the same time, I know that blue collar jobs are extremely difficult, having to be outside or on your feet all day, working on something with your hands. And while I understand that, some days I'm like, man, I really would like to be a blue collar worker, like 1 or 2 days a week to break up the monotony of my job. But there's so many just BS jobs out there that people just don't really care about. And, I'm kind of in that same boat. I do accounting and sometimes you just don't, it's not like I ever need an award for doing my job. But, after you send the financials off, after you complete the financials, the only thing that gets said to you is if something is wrong or if something is bad. for the most part. You know, you never see the fruits of your labor. You just know that you completed your task and you'll thankfully get paid on Friday, right? Another crazy thing to me is these companies wanting maximum effort for minimum payment. Like companies will do the most to not like to just to make sure that you don't get paid what you're worth, right? And it's so crazy to me because you know they'll hire people for the minimum amount, and then when you come in and you're maybe a little bit maybe you have a little bit more experience, a little bit more talent, they'll be like, oh well this person accepted this, and now this is what everybody's going to get. And it's almost like weird. It's like, well, if a job's posted at 60 but somebody's more desperate, they'll take 50,000. Then now the company is like, oh well, everybody in this job will now accept 50,000. And now all of a sudden you're like, why are they paying so low? Right? And then the craziest thing is, and I know this is slowly changing, but companies aren't even required to put a salary on their when they post a job. So like you apply for a job and you have no idea how much it pays. And then the companies have the audacity to get upset when somebody's first question in an interview or a phone screening is, you know, like how much, like what's the salary of this job? Like that they expect you to not care about that, right? Like we don't work jobs for fun. You know, we work to get paid, and it's so weird that companies just don't care to put a salary on these job postings, and then when you ask about it, they're almost like weirdly offended. And then on the contrary to that, sometimes you do have companies, but they post salaries when they post a job, or excuse me, a salary. They post a salary range. So when they do post a salary, sometimes they put a range, and sometimes it's a pretty big range. But what that allows the company to do is kind of bypass and look better, right? They bypass that whole, well, you know, like we did put the salary in the job description. But what they do is they say, oh, well, to get the top of the range, you have to have more experience. But I guarantee you, no matter how much experience you have, they will never give you the top of that range because they can always say, oh, well, you didn't have this much experience. So either way, you're getting the short end of the stick there. And it blows my mind with all the laws and legislation we have that companies are not legally obligated to put how much they pay in a job posting. Blows my mind. I'm sure it'll happen at some point. I think like New York, the state of New York mandates it, which is really cool. And I hope that goes to every state. That would be really cool. Just salary transparency in general is super good for the worker and the consumer, knowing how much they're worth and how much they should expect to get. And so to kind of wrap this up, I don't want this video to be too long. I think just the younger generation is just over working the maximum amount and getting paid the minimum, especially when, and I didn't even talk about how much the dollar buys anymore. The dollar just doesn't buy anything. Like it used to. I mean, I've talked about this in previous videos, but the dollar used to, you know, back in the 50s and 60s, you were able to work a pretty, you know, average job, and you were able to have a home, a wife, a couple kids, a car, a country club membership, all on one salary. And now people are working pretty good, I mean, very good jobs. Two people working, you have a two income household, and you can't even afford a house nowadays. And it's just driving people insane because back in the day, you used to be able to see the fruits of your labor, and nowadays you don't. You work super hard and you're like, why am I still in debt? And I've made, you know, not everybody makes great financial decisions. I get that. But I was in this boat myself. I'm just like, how are we not advancing? How are we not moving up in society? It's like we're still really struggling, and we work two pretty good jobs. So I think people are noticing that, especially the younger generations. I'm at the very end of the millennial generation. And then you have the Gen Zs who are coming up into the workforce, and we're just over it. You know, it's not that we want, you know, anything crazy or anything special. It's just that we want to be appreciated for doing sometimes just mind-numbing work for half the pay of the managers who's making your life hell. Sometimes we just want to be able to enjoy our life. You know, working 40 to 45 years is not super enjoyable. I'm 28 and I look into the future and I'm like, man, I have 38 more years left to work, which is insane. 37 or 38 more years is just brutal, absolutely brutal. So if possible, I guess anything that I can give to anybody watching is try to find work that's meaningful. If you're in a company that values you and you have a good manager, I would do whatever you can to not leave. Even if the pay isn't the best, I think at the end of the day, having less pay but having a really good work environment with a good manager, with a good job is so much better. Because the more money you make, usually the more work, the more stress, the more BS you'll have to deal with. So I hope the 9-to-5 job market changes in the future where, and I don't necessarily see where the power can come back into the workers' hands, the actual grunt work. Hopefully companies will take more of a different approach and say, hey, let's have less managers, more people actually doing the work. They'll be able to have less people. They'll pay the workers more, but they should have better productivity, right? A lot of companies have so many managers that you can't even keep it straight. And I don't even know what half these people do besides just sit on meetings. So anyway, I'll wrap up. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below and tell me what you think and what your experiences are. And, if you see the 9-to-5 getting any better, because frankly, I don't know how it can get much better. And the only thing that I see happening is the value of the dollar getting worse and salaries not making up for it. So anyway, more videos to come. Talk to you guys later. Peace.